So talking today about the great shift left, or the movement to make engineering teams own absolutely everything. And part of this was actually part of the Agile push, where we want to make as many things happen as early in the process as possible. But I'm actually going to extend this to mean that it involves making an engineering team not just take on the technical functions, but take on all functions in an organization, in an attempt to create a single owner of that and push everything inside the development loop. And I think that's cool, but let's look at what that really means, because every time somebody says that, I have never seen anybody make a list of what that actually implies. And so I tried to create this list, and we're going to go into details of this. In my mind, and you can't read this, and that's on purpose, sort of, this is kind of a throwdown list of the items that I think a development team or engineering teams now own. If you were to collapse down the teams that support them, collapse their work down, and give them more direct ownership, and take a completely engineering focus. And look, I'm not opposed to this. I think it makes sense in a lot of situations. Well, in some situations, it kind of depends on what business you're in. As usual, everybody looks at Amazon, takes a lesson from it, and decide it works in their area. And then the question is, how well does it work for Amazon, and how well does it work for companies that have picked it up? And I'm interested in feedback from people on that. So if that was a giant diagram, and you probably are going to want to click on that, when you click on it on your home screen, if you click on the blog link, you'll be able to read all those. But let's dig into them a little bit. So what are we doing here? We're really talking about collapsing the org and the teams in an org down onto the development teams, right? So we're going to move development, shared services, all the analysis capability, DevOps, testing, anything related to data, operations, all of those. There may be still a corporate level, but basically all of those functional teams, the idea, and more, and I'm open to suggestions on what more would be, the idea is that those will collapse down onto the development teams, and the development teams will take over those capabilities. And if you think about it, what does that mean from a skill set point of view? And that'll be part of the cognitive load discussion. And then if you look at the roles, so if we have old roles, we have the developer, the user experience people, the business analyst people, system analysts, DBAs, data designers, testers, different kinds of testers, DevOps, CI/CD people, infrastructure triage, tier one support, security, data security, API security, all that kind of stuff. Basically, all of those roles now fall. And I was going to put product owner in here, but anyway, well, there's others like product owner, product in general. And did I put, business analyst, because in a lot of ways that's the proxy for the operational part of business. And then you've got the visionary part of the business, which is product. So all of those roles now move into the developer, which means you need people on the team with those skills. And the developer teams are what, like 8 people normally, maybe less. Like the right Agile team is as small as you can make it. But the question is, if you have all of these skills, how many people does it require to cover those skills? So let's take a look at process. These are the process-oriented tasks that you need to own on your team. And you think of these as like the Agile, the program, right? Measuring and improving what you're doing. Heck, half the teams don't even know how to do that. They just build stuff. They pull in stuff, and then they hope that they know what the key performance indicators are and what the dashboards are. You've got user story refinement, acceptance criteria that need to be done. If you've eliminated all the non-engineering positions, how do you still have an inward-facing view, a customer-oriented view? Because to be honest, a lot of times engineers are really focused on how to build stuff, how it works, right? What's your definition of done? The teams own all of it because nobody else at the story or the feature level exists to support that. So the teams actually own that. And how do you ensure quality across the org? The teams own that. If we look at the outward facing pieces, right? Customer centricity. Now you have a bunch of engineers who typically are hired and trained for implementation, now owning user experience, customer centricity, the business requirements, partner integration with other teams. They have to hold all those conversations. And the product interface with any product teams or with any other teams to try and put together a holistic product, right? So I feel like this section should actually be bigger, but this outward facing thing usually a lot of times will fall on one or two people and not the whole team. So I don't know. Do you staff for it? Do we keep those people? We eliminated the roles that supported it. So what does that mean? And then we have the pre-construction teams. And so this to me is really the functionality. And these are the design efforts, high availability. Do they know how to do that? Not just build an application. Do they know how to build one that scales and stay up? So they have to maintain the documents, do all the non-functional requirements, do architectural decision records. Typically, these teams do lousy documentation, but that's not allowed anymore because they're not going to get any help, right? Data modeling, design artifacts, reviews, story reviews, code reviews. Oh, that's in a different section. So this is the, what did I call it? Pre-construction part where you're actually doing prep, right? Because if you're the engineering team, people always think about building stuff, but guess what? The section before this and this actually come before the building part. Then we have construction. Everybody thinks an engineering team just owns construction. And, I misspelled version here. I'll fix that. But basically, this is kind of what people that are engineers or software developers think they're going to be doing all the time, and this is why they exist. And really, you notice it's only like 7 blocks out of the entire thing. So this is the basics of good software development. And, you can kind of write code, but to be honest, nobody ever wants to spend 90% of your time maintaining code. So this is all the kind of the first things you need on a software team around the software creation part itself. Everything else feeds into this or supports it. So the next one, trying to keep this under 10 minutes, quality. What do we need to do in the quality space, right? Oh, service, misspelled service, API and fakes, performance testing. Service, API, and fakes is really around how do I do failure testing? How do I do unhappy path testing? Creating and executing functional tests. Half the time, people don't even create functional tests. They just test in prod. We don't want to do that if we can help it, especially you guys building spaceships. That seems like a horrible plan. I mean, occasionally you do it, but you don't want to do it all the time. You have to prepare test data. You got to understand your environments. You got to test in those environments. You got to see what's going to happen to make sure you're actually up. If you have any kind of business continuity requirements, how are you going to do scale testing? That's different than performance testing. Capacity and SLA information, environment health monitoring, environment health dashboards. The development and engineering teams own all of this when you shift left. And the question is, who's going to be the expert on each team? You need a backup for each one of these positions. And the reality is if people are on vacation, other people need to cover this. I feel like there's more in the quality space here, and I'm open to suggestions, and we'll look at fixing the spelling. So the next one here is operational excellence. And this is also in the production space a little bit, hey, what are the things we need to do to keep a set of applications up? Because if I built it, I own it. If I'm shifting left, then I own all the production pieces of this too. That's what YBYO, you build it, you own it actually means. And so that takes really up to the team. If you're going to be doing the safe thing, you're going to do feature toggles. The team owns that. Are they going to enable things in prod? Right? It's up to them. They're going to work with the business potentially to decide when those things need to happen. But actually, the team owns it, right? The business isn't going to own it. Well, maybe they do, but shift left implies the team owns everything. They own failure detection. How many times have you worked in an engineering group and it's actually customers like you, man, you're down. Like they don't even know, or there's some other team trying to watch that. But if you're shifting left, or if you're going to do you build it, you own it, then you need to figure out how you're going to make all these pieces work, right? So then we have the parts where what you built was less than excellent, and that means you own defect prioritization, defect capture, data repair, outage and policy, contact information, handling all the contacts when people, what did I put here? Outage policy and contact. Anyway, so these are kind of like the other was, hey, what do we need to know? Or what are we going to do to try and know if we have a quality application? And then when we actually didn't do it, what is our plan? And the team actually owns that. I've worked places where we had massive data fix teams, millions of records needed to be fixed at previous employers. And guess what? You own that now. You got to figure out how you're going to make that work and make it in a way that supports the business and doesn't, kind of leave weird holes in the data. So this is the counterpart to the development part. This is actually in the last 20 years has really been kind of the CI/CD. When people think of shift left, they think of this. Everything is code, right? Infrastructure is code, the pipelines, the unit test automation. So we talked about, we own the testing before. How are we going to make that happen all the time, right? How are we going to manage our secrets? What do we do for deployments? The teams actually own functional test automation and integration and making sure when deployments work, smoke testing. All of those things are owned by the team in addition to writing code and everything else that we talked about before. So another area that people typically ignore until there's a breach or until you make the front page of some news. Well, there's not many news anymore because people have pretty much, well, anyway. So the point here is that the cognitive load also you need to understand there. And you'll have audit teams, but basically the engineering team owns everything about data protection and privacy and governance and all of those things, failure mode analysis, all of that belongs to the engineering team, and this comes out of the capacity for actually to deliver code. And then the last one, in an attempt to try almost make 10 minutes, is just kind of the general corporate overhead that sucks time out of the team for being a bunch of employees, and so or having a life outside of work. And so these things all derate the team and take capacity away. So that was kind of in trying to make it in 10 minutes, but I almost got it to 11. Basically, we're collapsing all the teams in the company down, trying to push more things left, closer to engineering. And my view is engineering now owns all these. You need to staff for it, you need to scale for it, and you need to plan for it. Have a great day and take a nap.